DFS, Dave Lochran, Jake Harry. And for once, you're not seeing Josh Engelman's ugly mug in the early morning. He's getting the day off. That's right. Actually, you know what? Not just the day off. He'll be getting Thursday mornings off, Jake. So you and me on the strategy show going forward. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, it'll be cool. You guys will get a break from Josh for Thursdays and a little more of me as I transition from NHL to MLB. So, yeah, it'll be good. Hopefully we have some better slates going forward, at least better main slates, because this one, kind of a weird day for baseball.
It is, and I think you may see some disappointed faces in the YouTube chat just because they love trying to rile Josh up early in the morning. It has become a thing. So he'll be back. I mean, he still does enough shows that you'll see him pretty much everywhere. But so okay, let's just jump right into it first of all.
Sure.
And we take on the strategy show, nothing's going to change outside of I don't have the team's percentage of winning that Josh does. But outside of that, I think we're good. Now, only 5 games today, and then I think there's a 4 p.m. game, and then there's a 8 and a 10. But we have the big slates. Is the slate that starts at 12 Eastern time and has 5 games. Just to make sure here, going throughout all of these sites, Yahoo Sports, sponsor of the strategy show, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 8 games, Jake. So it looks like they're running all of the games for their regular main slate contests.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's wow, that's quite spread out. That's back like the old days, like right when I started playing MLB DFS.
It really is, where they used to add every single game. That's crazy. And let's see FanDuel. Because I know FanDuel. Okay, so FanDuel's doing 4. DraftKings is doing 5, and Yahoo's doing 8. So
good thing they called each other on this slate.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? We'll go through all of them, not a problem. But we'll focus on these early games more specifically, starting with Atlanta and San Diego. So you've got Strom and Fultonevich on the mound. Fultonevich missed a bunch of games, and he came back to pitch his first start of the season against the Rockies. Got lit up pretty good. On the other hand, he's had a great 2018 season, and Matt Strom, he's pitched really nicely for the Padres, but has a tough matchup against an Atlanta team that makes a lot of good contact. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, Strom has pitched okay. The Braves are just a team I hate messing around with. If they're going to roll out their real lineup. So it's a day game. We might get some weird stuff going on here. But I think they had a pretty watered-down lineup yesterday with Acuna, so I would expect him to be...
and no Donaldson either.
Yeah, so I would expect Acuna to be back in. I'm not exactly sure about Donaldson. It just looks like a really tough spot for Strom, and you're not really getting a discount on him either. So on a 5-gamer, I think I can find other spots I like a little bit better than Strom versus the Braves, who I just think are one of the toughest matchups for either hand. And then Fulte, while he did get lit up, I think he did have a 12% swinging strike rate in his first start. So that was the good part. And hopefully it looks like he's going to get a bunch of righties here. So I think actually these lineups are out. I didn't even realize this Braves lineup is out. Acuna's back in. And no Donaldson. No Donaldson.
No Donaldson. Swanson's still batting second.
Yes. Yeah, Swanson second for 4,200 on DK. Braves are really cheap, man. And then, it looks like, 8 righties in the lineup against Fulte. So couldn't really be a better spot for him, I don't think. And I don't know, are you worried about that start, his first start back?
No, not really. Look, you mentioned the swinging strike rate. There's certain things that I'm looking at to make sure that everything seems okay. First of all, I want to see if they're missing bats. I want to see what their velocity looks like, obviously. And because Fulte's, a hard thrower. His velocity was down a bit from last season, but in his first start, it's really not concerning me all that much. Sometimes you have to work up to it. Um, but I will say, like, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about this. It's probably worth discussing though. Like his max velocity was 96 miles per hour. His max velocity in mostly every other year, mostly every other start is like 99,
Hmm.
98, 100. And I mean, seriously, he's actually touched 101 at times last year. I'd like to think this is just him working back into form, but it's something to talk about.
Yeah, that is a little bit concerning. I knew he was a fireballer, but I saw the 95 or 95 plus he was throwing on his fastball for average last start, and I just assumed that that's kind of where he was at. But yeah, I guess I didn't realize how hard he had been throwing in past years. But that is concerning. So it's hard to judge right now with just one start, and I don't have the numbers what he was throwing in the minors in his rehab starts. So for me, I hope it's just rounding into form, especially for this price. But there's probably some merit in having some Padres head stacks if you guys are worried about that.
He's okay. So a couple ways I say, like, if this was like a an oblique injury,
Mm-hmm.
not that really happens unless you're swinging the bat, but like just say it was, he got hit in the head with a line drive or something. I'd almost be less worried about that than an elbow,
Yeah.
um, with elbow soreness. But I think it's probably less to worry about than anything else. He's still touching almost 97. My guess is that we see him work that back up. And it's probably not ridiculous to think that, his first start of the season isn't that high. So I actually check this out. I went back to the start of previous seasons,
Mm-hmm.
like in 2016, his first start, his max velocity was like 97. Um, the last year it was, or 2017, 97. 2018, it was 99. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and assume that he'll work his way back up to this, and didn't have as many spring training outings like you would have expected. So I'm not too concerned about it. I think you're right though. Going up against a grip of righties in San Diego that, yes, they have power, but also will strike out a lot, and we know that he has good stuff. Struck righties out at 27% last season and held him to a 255 WOBA. That is, I mean, that's a price that I don't think we're going to see on Fulte all for the rest of the year if he comes out of this one with really solid numbers.
Yeah. So if he is healthy here, I think he's more of like a 9K, $9,500 pitcher on DK. So just taking the discount, giving him the benefit of the doubt that he will get that velocity back up. And we're probably going to know right away. Like if he's all of a sudden dipping down to 94 and 93, maybe he's still hurt, but I'm willing to take that risk at 7,800.
So am I. Absolutely. And knowing that this is a decent Padres team, but against righties, they do have some strikeouts. What are your thoughts though on the other side of this game? Looking at the totals here, Atlanta has a 4.6 run implied total. It's the fourth highest on the all day slate. So I'm just, pulling all 8 games. It's the fourth highest on the day overall. Meanwhile, against Fulte, San Diego is only at 3.9. Jake, I like Strom, and we know that he has really good stuff, but I also like the Atlanta Braves against lefties more than I do against righties because Albies is better from the right side. Camargo's in the lineup batting switch, better from the right side. Swanson, Flowers, a horrible catcher position. Even he can hit lefties. Freeman's crushing lefties. And, of course, Ronald Acuna Jr. I'm someone that would rather play the Braves when they're facing a left-hander or at least stack them. What about you?
I agree. And I think we talked about this last time when we did a couple shows last fall. Like at 8,100 against the Braves, who strike out under 20% against lefties,
Right.
the highest WRC plus, or the second highest behind the Astros at 133 against lefties this season. How does Strom actually kill you here? Because I don't think it's going to be with strikeouts. Like if he goes 7 innings and can somehow get a K per inning, then yeah, he's going to be the nut pitcher that you need. But I just don't think that's very likely at all. I think it's very likely some of these Braves hitters get to him. There's just too many good ones, all the way 1 through 7 with Flowers.
Yeah, totally agree. And I know he only had like 80 plate appearances against lefties last year, but Flowers crushed left-handed pitching. So, I mean, look, I'm willing to go there today. I have no problem with it at all, especially when you look at, I mean, you said sub 20% K rate. When you look at some of the individual plate appearances on these guys, or individual K rates, sorry, against lefties, I mean, you're looking at some microscopic numbers, like Ozzy Albies 13%, Markakis 14%. Let me make sure all these guys, Markakis, and yeah, we have no Inciarte though, right? Yeah. No, Freeman 19%. Acuna's only at 20% going back to the start of last season. And then you've got like Camargo and Swanson in that 22 range, but there's really no one that stands out as a monster K guy outside of, and these are 26 and 27% respectively, McCann and Donaldson, neither of whom are in the lineup anyway. It's just not an easy spot for Strom at all.
Yeah, I just don't know how he hurts me here. I think it's much more likely that Acuna and Flowers, like you mentioned, I love Flowers here. Camargo can hit lefties. So it's just a little bit too tough of a matchup and too high of a price for Strom for me to want to play him here.
All right, let's talk Mets and Cincinnati. Tyler Mahle and Noah Syndergaard. We're starting to see Syndergaard's price come down to where it probably should be. I mean, I just don't buy into him being a 10K plus pitcher. I can't, I don't, and I probably never will. On Yahoo, he is, on Yahoo, Syndergaard's $45. He's cheaper than Fultonevich, who's $47. So I know we say this a lot, but just be very be aware of the pricing discrepancies from Yahoo to FanDuel to DraftKings, and don't try to just turn one lineup over onto Yahoo because it's way different. Right? Morton, Price, Strasburg, Fulte, and Syndergaard, Berrios, then Gray. The pricing's way different over there, Jake, whereas Syndergaard's $9,400 on DraftKings and $9K on FanDuel. Totals on this game, by the way, you have 3.3 for the opposing Reds, lowest of the day of all of the 8 teams going. And then against Tyler Mahle, you have a 4.3 run total for the Mets. I liked the lefties a lot yesterday, and they were a colossal disappointment against a righty in DeSclafani who really struggles against lefties. You would think the same thing would be the case against Mahle, but maybe not. I guess we'll talk pitching first, though. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mahle just giving up so much hard contact to lefties, even going back to last season. This season, I believe he's over, or I guess combined, starting in 2018, 46% hard hit rate to lefties, 2 whip, which is something you don't often see. He does get some strikeouts, but a 5.51 xFIP against lefties. I mean, just really concerning numbers there. So if Cano, Conforto, and McNeil are there at the top, Nimmo, him as well, it's hard not to like some of these Mets lefties. I don't see myself getting to a lot of Tyler Mahle. And then Syndergaard, like he seems perpetually underpriced, but he never seems like he gets there. Do you have that same feeling about him?
Absolutely, yeah. He perpetually underperforms as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You think about it, he is walking a lot of batters right now. Mm-hmm. He can get strikeouts, but the odd thing is, even when he doesn't walk a lot of batters, it still seems like he struggles to get through short innings. And 5 innings. He did go 7 once this year. But it just seems like, command has been an issue for him, and it's resulted in less than stellar fantasy totals. Let me ask you this. We'll take a 30,000 foot view here real quick. Sure. If you're looking at the other pitchers on this slate, Uh, Instead of going game by, we're going to go game by game, but just looking at it now, you have Syndergaard here. You have Morton against Kansas City. You have Freddie Peralta, who is coming off the 10-day to face the Rockies away from Coors. You have Strom. You have John Gray at Miller Park, Fultonevich, who we talked about, Peacock, Duffy, Tyler Mahle, and Berrios at the top on DraftKings against Houston. Where would Syndergaard rank for you, knowing who we have? To put it in context, knowing the other options that we have.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, where else are you going to go if you don't go to Syndergaard? I mean, maybe Fulte from a value perspective.
Right. This is what I'm thinking too.
It's just,
I think Peralta's all right though,
yeah.
but he's,
How is Peralta good, by the way? I mean, we'll get to him in a few minutes, but
yeah,
How is
absolutely
he good? It makes no sense. Or how does he
so
miss bats, I guess?
Right. It definitely makes it more difficult to kind of pin down who you like here. And then if you were to take FanDuel, you're taking Tampa Bay and Kansas City out of the equation.
Yeah.
And that's tough because I am obviously of the belief that Charlie Morton's a very good pitcher. And now you don't even have Charlie Morton on FanDuel if you don't want to go Syndergaard.
Yeah, so Morton and Fulte, I guess, are the guys that stand out to me besides Syndergaard. I'm probably going to be over on Berrios. I'm assuming he's going to be pretty low owned at almost 10K. But he's just a guy that I really, really believe in talent-wise, especially when he's at home. Noted home road splits for Berrios. I don't know. I mean, where else do you go besides Syndergaard? So I think ownership's going to dictate what I do with him. I'm expecting him to be very heavily owned when we do finally get ownership. And if he is, I'm probably going to be underweight. I think Adam said a few weeks ago, if you just go underweight on Syndergaard for the entire season, you probably come out on top. And I kind of agree with that.
I totally agree with it. Granted, I think price matters. Like if you're coming underweight on Syndergaard and he's 7,800, then maybe you're not going to get those same positive results. But when you still have to pay somewhat of a premium for him, I totally agree. I don't think it's a necessary spot. Now, look, working in his favor is the lowest total on the slate of all 8 games goes to Cincinnati at 3.3. They're not a very potent offense. We know that. But on the other side, this is also not a team that has a lot of strikeouts whatsoever. I mean, you look at this team and where are the bulk of the strikeouts coming from? If you bring it back to the start of last year, Iglesias, 12%, Peraza, 12%. This is versus righties. And they all have 400, 300 plus plate appearances. Winker, 14, Votto, 16, Barnhart, 16. Even Puig's at 20%. Oh, Scotty mentioned that there's no Joey Votto. Good, thanks, Joey. Or Scotty. That helps. But still, you don't get a ton of strikeouts where are you getting your where are you getting your bulk of strikeouts from outside of like a 25% Casali and 23% Dietrich and Suarez?
Yeah, so not a great strikeout matchup. So that's maybe another notch against Syndergaard here. But all that being said, it is pretty decent for a guy who struggles with stolen bases and really, really struggles with stolen bases. I was looking at just to see if any of these guys had been aggressive on the base pads, and it looks like the only guys that have a couple steals this season are Puig and Peraza, but they didn't stack them up at the top of the lineup. So maybe they just didn't notice how bad Syndergaard is at holding runners, or they just don't care. But like Winker, Suarez, Dietrich, these guys aren't really big threats to steal on Syndergaard. So while I'm not in love with Syndergaard even at this price, it's hard to avoid him if you think that the people running on him is not going to be an issue.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's tough. You might have to bite the bullet here. I don't know if I looked this up actually after the deeper dive, and I had messaged Adam. I said, look, I know that DeGrom has struggled to hold runners, but did you know that he's already allowed 9 stolen bases? And this was before yesterday's start. So he had already allowed 9 stolen bases in 5 starts. So, you look at that on a per 9 basis, you were talking about Um, you were talking. Well, how many innings did he pitch yesterday? 7. So he had 26 innings before that. Jacob DeGrom on the season was allowing, let's see, 3.1 stolen bases per 9. And Cincinnati didn't get a single swipe against him. Now, they also didn't have many base runners, but I think you're right in saying this is not a Reds team with a whole lot of speed. What do you, if you had to guess, what do you think his ownership is going to be on specifically on FanDuel and DraftKings where we have fewer games?
On DK, I would think he's going to be like 40 plus percent. He's always chalky, and he's
He
always
is.
seemingly underpriced, and he's always seemingly underperforming. So, um, I have to imagine he's the chalkiest pitcher on the slate. Just looking at the run total against him, the lack of speed. He's at home. It's not like great hitting weather or anything. I don't know. I mean, I would have to imagine he's 40 plus percent when we get ownership.
I mean, Jake on FanDuel, even though it's a one pitcher site, I wouldn't be surprised if he's even higher because Fultonevich is more expensive than him.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, Fulty's 92, Noah Syndergaard's 9K. Um, Freddie Peralta is the cheapest pitcher on the slate at 6,200, which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you might get ownership there, but you're probably going to be in cash games. You're going with Syndergaard, but I'm still even on this slate. I'm okay with getting away from Syndergaard in tournaments. Like, I guess the question is, and then we'll move on here. But what do you like? How often do you see him with a ceiling game against the Reds?
Yeah, and maybe you don't need a ceiling game too, now that I'm thinking
I
of it.
don't.
Because like these other matchups aren't great. I'm not a huge believer in Peralta. Barrios has a really tough matchup. Peacock has a pretty tough matchup with this Twins lineup that they came out with. And yeah, I mean, Fulte, we talked about possibly some issues there with velocity. So there's definitely some things you can knock with each pitcher here. And maybe you just hope Syndergaard goes 6 and can get you 5 or 6 strikeouts. And that might be enough for this price, honestly.
All right, Mets bats. We have the lineup: McNeil, Dom Smith, Cano, Conforto. I do like no. We have 4 righties atop the lineup. Now, uh, if you're wondering what looks different about today, there's no Pete Alonso.
Mhm.
But what do you think of this lineup that we just got for the Mets against Tyler Mahle?
That's an awesome lineup, I think, for the Mets.
Yeah,
Just
five righties, 5 lefties in the top
Yeah,
6.
that's exactly what you want to do against Tyler Mahle. So I didn't really like Mahle before. I get that he's super cheap and stuff, but this will get me basically off of him. It's looking like that lineup's really, really tough for him. Like Smith, a guy who does strike out a lot, if I remember correctly, but he does have power as well. And then you could say the same thing besides the strikeouts for Cano and Conforto and Nimmo, McNeil. I like leading off for 4,300 too. So I really like this Mets stack with this lineup they came out with.
So do I. All right. We've got Minnesota and Houston, and you have Jose Barrios, who is you mentioned a couple of things a minute ago. Very much a home road. He has wild home road splits, and I usually try to stay away from them when I can, but his have been very pronounced throughout his career, and I don't blame you for bringing him up at all. If you didn't, I would have. And then Brad Peacock, who, look, he has one really good breaking pitch, and he's pretty much a 2-pitch guy, so he struggles third time through the order. Now he's got a Minnesota team that doesn't strike out very often, doesn't have Estudillo in the lineup, but outside of that, they've got pretty much everyone. Now you do have Castro and Buxton towards the bottom. We can talk about that. The totals for this one, 4 even for Houston and 4.1 for Minnesota. What do you have, Jake?
Peacock is a guy that I would expect to be pretty decently owned on DK. So the guys that stick out to me for the Twins, if you are looking for leverage, assuming Peacock is somewhat chalky, are Rosario, Polanco, and Kepler. And honestly, I think you can stack against Peacock because he is a guy that, like you mentioned, 2-pitch pitcher. When he does struggle, it is with power, specifically from the left-handed side. So I like some Twins bats. I think Peacock is okay here for 7,600, but he's another one that it's going to depend on ownership. And then speaking of ownership, I'm expecting Barrios to be pretty low owned, and he's just a guy that he's so good against righties that assuming Houston rolls out Springer and Altuve and Bregman, Correa, their normal lineup, I think he can be okay here for 9,900, and he's kind of my pivot off of Syndergaard today.
Okay. Yeah, it's one of those spots where people are going to be nervous to go to. Right? There's no doubt, and I think rightfully so, especially in cash at least. He's going to have way less ownership than Syndergaard. The only thing that sucks is knowing that this is a Houston team with just so very little strikeouts. But it is a night day game. Maybe we see a different lineup for Houston. It's possible. Is it out yet? I don't have it yet.
It's not out yet.
Okay. So who knows? Maybe it looks a little bit different. Most of these other teams are running out, one or two. Okay, we have thanks, Tom. Tom lets us know we have ownership updated. Let's take a look at this, Jake.
Yeah, I think I've got it pulled up. I don't want to give away too much. So
well, we have Syndergaard on 37 on DraftKings, and wait, really? Oh wait, you know what? So FanDuel's main slate. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So by the way, if anyone's looking at these ownership projections, so DraftKings main slate is the early games, and FanDuel's main slate is considered with the later games. So we're going to have to go back and forth to try and find that. Yeah. But we have them around close to 40% on DraftKings, Jay, and 46 on FanDuel right now for Noah Syndergaard. Anything pop out to you first before we move on here?
No, it's kind of what I expected on Syndergaard and Barrios. So I really like that split, and that's why I like playing Barrios here, at least going overweight on him and under on Syndergaard, because you're going to get essentially the same lineup construction if you go with those two guys, 99 and 9,500. So you can basically stack the same teams or take the same SP2s, but you're just differentiating at one spot or a couple spots with those two pitchers. And when I load up my projections and stuff, I'm sure they're going to project pretty close, maybe Syndergaard even a little bit higher on a raw point basis. But I don't think Barrios is I don't think Syndergaard is 5 times as likely to outscore Barrios in this spot. I don't know about
I agree. Yeah, even though it's a really tough spot for Barrios, it's not. And also, he's not 12K. They're pretty similarly priced. Barrios right now projected at 7% on DraftKings and 4% on FanDuel.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, yeah. 4% on FanDuel. He could easily be the highest raw point pitcher, especially if we get, even if we get 1 or 2 of Springer, Altuve, Bregman, Gurriel out of that lineup, and maybe you get a couple more strikeouts in there.
Yeah. That could make a big difference, and I don't think it will shift ownership enough. I don't think enough people will jump on it if Houston runs out a watered down lineup.
I agree.
So keep your eyes out. Keep a lookout for that Houston lineup. Could make a considerable difference. Look, I think Peacock's a decent enough pitcher. I mention it a lot that he does struggle third time through the order, and it makes sense because he leans on 2 pitches. He's also done a much better job of preventing home runs this year. Now, I think the big question is it worth getting to somebody like Peacock on this slate? Early answer is probably not, and the reason is on FanDuel, if I wanted to go cheap, I'd probably just punt to the very bottom with Peralta, knowing that he at least has considerable strikeout upside. And then because right now you have Peralta is going to have some ownership though, 22%. So we have Syndergaard at 46, Peralta at 22, and Fulte at 14 on FanDuel, and then it just drops off a cliff with everyone else, giving you the viewer a little bit more here, a little access behind the curtain since it's a short slate. And then Jake on DraftKings, Syndergaard at 37, Peralta also at 37,
Man.
Morton at 30, and then we have Gray and Fulte down there around 29. So very bunched up towards the top, and Peacock is not one of them. He is right now projected to have virtually zero ownership.
Really?
Does that change your mind at all, or you still have no interest in a guy like him?
That does change my mind a little bit. I guess it makes sense that people like Gray and Peralta were expecting more ownership on them. So yeah, if Peacock's gonna have no ownership, he's the kind of guy who he's not overpriced, I don't think.
So I don't think so either.
Yeah, it's not like you're spending up to be contrarian. I think he is a guy with huge strikeout stuff. Looking at the Twins versus righties this year, they're striking out around league average, almost 24%. Oh wait, did I have that against lefties or righties? Let me see here. Were they below average? I can't remember.
You talking about the Twins?
Yeah, they are below average. I was looking at
they were like well below, but I know Astudillo being out is not going to help them either.
Yeah, so you've got Castro and Buxton at the bottom too. If he can navigate through this lineup a couple times and even get you five and a third, that's probably where I'll project him around. I think he's going to grade out okay for me. And when you add in almost no ownership, even if he comes up to like 10% ownership or something like that, I think he's definitely worth a shot. Like, he's got as good of strikeout stuff as a bunch of these other guys like Gray and Peralta, Fulte. So why not take a couple stabs at him down there?
I don't think it's crazy at all. I have him grading out actually as, like my, fourth best pitcher on this slate, which I don't think is crazy. Obviously, fourth best pitcher from a point per dollar, just a value perspective. I have him behind Fulte, I have him behind Morton, and behind Syndergaard. It's kind of interesting, right around there with Peralta. Yeah, I don't think it's the craziest idea to look at somebody like, someone like Peacock and think that he could give you 25 fantasy points or something. And on a slate like this, that probably does you pretty well. The K rates for this team, that Kepler doesn't strike out. That a few of these guys are pretty low K rate guys. But then at the bottom, Castro and Buxton, I think you just mentioned it. Both of those guys strike out quite a bit. CJ Cron strikes out above a league average amount. So there's probably, I don't know, Gonzalez around 24%. There's 4 or 5 guys in this lineup that are worse than league average from a strikeout standpoint, but nobody outside of Castro that strikes out a crazy amount either.
I didn't realize how well Peacock had been getting strikeouts against lefties going back to the start of last season. And I know he was in relief, so maybe these numbers are a little bit higher than they should be, but a 24.4% K rate versus lefties since the start of 2018, that's actually really respectable.
Very solid. Yeah, no question.
I thought he was more in like the 20 and maybe below 20% range. I had him as having really big splits, but it looks like maybe not the case. He can strike out lefties. And
it's kind of funny because his slider is his best pitch, so you would think that he'd struggle more. I guess it's that curveball that he once in a while uses against lefties. That's a good catch, though. It's interesting. And I think you put it this way, you could do a lot worse than Peacock on this slate. I definitely believe that. Minnesota has a pretty low total as well.
It's cold here too.
Do you like any bats from this game?
So I do like the lefties. Like, I'm playing both sides of this because I'm playing 150. So the lefties I'm going to get to are Rosario, always grades out really, really well against right-handed pitching. Cruz, I'll play against almost anyone. Like I mentioned, Polanco and Kepler batting second and first. It's hard to avoid those guys. So it's mostly going to be the top 4. I don't want a ton to do with the rest of this Twins lineup, though.
All right. Let's talk about Milwaukee and Colorado. I find this game fascinating because the price point on Peralta was shocking to me on FanDuel. He's down there all the way at the bottom, $6,200. He's $800 cheaper than Tyler Mahle. I mean, that is baffling.
Yeah.
It's really surprising. Okay, so we know he does a couple things really well. He hides his pitches because he's not a hard thrower. I mean, he's sitting like 92, 93 this year. He can reach, I think his max is like 96, 97, but he sits, low to mid 90s, and he is your definition of a two-pitch pitcher. Just a ton of four-seamers. He'll mix that curveball in there, and hopefully going to miss a good amount of bats on both. But his whiff rates on the four-seamer and the curveball this year are above average, but not, they're solid but unspectacular.
Mhm.
And the question I've had about Peralta, Jake, since he came up last year, is we know that he can hide his stuff, and we know that he has his perceived velocity is excellent. Movement on the fastball gets bats to miss. But how long with this two-pitch arsenal do you continue to baffle major league hitters? That's pretty much what my question is going forward for somebody like Peralta.
Yeah, at some point they've got to figure this out, right? You don't see these two pitch pitchers have sustained success.
As starters, no.
Yeah, exactly. So like as a reliever, you would expect him to be fine, come in for an inning or two, but like he's got a 10, 13 strikeout game in his career, in his short career in the MLB as a starter.
Wasn't it his first start?
Yeah, I think it was his first start. Maybe it was against these same Rockies, possibly.
It was against the Rockies. You're right. I think it was at Coors.
Yeah.
And he has an 11 strikeout game this year.
Yeah. So it's just weird. He pops one of these games every once in a while. I usually just go against ownership with him.
For sure.
I mean, he grades out as an okay pitcher if you just look at the raw numbers, like the strikeouts versus righty, strikeouts versus lefties. But common sense wise, it doesn't seem like he would be this kind of a huge strikeout pitcher. And he does get wild at times. He's got some issues with walks. He doesn't get any chases. He doesn't get a ton of swinging strikes, at least this season. I know he was hurt for a while there. I was trying to see, I looked this up last night, but I wanted to make sure how many pitches he threw. I don't think there's a concern with him going deep if he does pitch well here. I think he was over 70 pitches, or maybe 75, 80 in his rehab start. So I think we're good on that front. And then the Rockies just struggle against right-handed pitching. On the season, they have a 23% K rate. That's a little bit above average, a 73 WRC plus. Their ISO is actually pretty good. On-base percentage, 303. I mean, they're just not great against right-handed pitching. So I think Peralta could pitch fine here, but the two guys I'm really looking at are Blackmon and Daniel Murphy. I absolutely love those two here.
Yeah, I do too. Look, Peralta he really feels like a boom or bust pitcher at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've seen from him for the most part. And I don't think it's really a surprise. Like when your fastball's working and when you have pinpoint command, you're going to get good results because you throw it 80% of the time. He throws it so much, but it's just baffling to me that you could sustain, like you said, quality results on that going forward, especially teams that you've seen more than once, more than twice. But going back to the start of last year, the Rockies have the fourth highest K rate on the road, which is not a surprise. We know they struggle outside of Coors. They rank 28th in weighted on base average away from home, but that doesn't mean they don't have power. They're middle of the league, actually bottom 10 in power away from Coors Field. So they do. We know a couple of things. We know they strike out away, particularly outside of the altitude. And we know that there are some strikeouts to be had here against righties. But I will say, I don't think we can understate how much Daniel Murphy in the lineup, how much of a difference that makes, because this guy just doesn't strike out.
Yeah, when he's healthy and he's right, he's one of the most annoying guys to have a pitcher go up against.
Absolutely.
So 4,400, I think, is just a phenomenal price for Murphy on DK. I'm assuming he's cheap elsewhere. Looking at FanDuel, he is at 39. That's a little bit more expensive.
And on Yahoo, he's 17.
Oh, yeah.
So compared to the rest of the position, he's your fifth highest priced.
I love that. So Murphy, Blackmon, we don't really need to talk about him much. Are you of the mindset that Murphy was just hurt all last season and that's why he was pretty disappointing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you looked at his batted ball numbers, and obviously this is just my opinion, but when you look at his batted ball numbers, uh, it was so weird because his line drive rate was so high, but his hard contact rate
Mm-hmm.
was like 7%.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's a premier hitter, power hitter. I don't ever expect that to be the case, but he's just looks so much better at the plate this year. He has a 4% swinging strike rate. Like he really doesn't swing over pitches. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And you look at the batted ball numbers, his hard hit rate isn't great, but it's at least up from last year. His fly ball rate's 56%. Uh, Now he isn't hitting a lot of line drives, but I'm still of the belief that with a guy like Murphy, as long as he continues to put the ball in play, which he's doing, he has a 9% K rate to an 11% walk rate. Good things will probably happen at a park like Miller Park, which is the second best lefty power park in baseball.
Yep. Yeah. So just to sum it up, for me, I'm more on the Rockies stack than Peralta, and especially I'm cherry picking a couple of these Rockies hitters as 2-mans and 3-mans. Where do you think you'll end up on Peralta on like the DK slate?
It's tough, probably away from him, and I pretty much take the same stance as you. Now, 4.1 total for the Rockies against Peralta, and 4.5 for Milwaukee against John Gray. If you know me, I'm a huge believer in John Gray. That doesn't mean that John Gray is high on my radar today. Miller Park concerns me. It really does. I think it's a preeminent power park for lefties and even for righties. But with Peralta, you're looking at this. Here's why, Jake, I side with the Rockies. If this were like other slates in this same series where these Rocky batters were priced through the roof, right? Like Blackmon being 5,300 yesterday. He's down. He's dropped $700 overnight. Daniel Murphy has dropped $400. Their price tags have tanked from slate to slate. So why not? Right? Like I have no problem going to the Rocky hitters here and hoping that Peralta does what he's done several times already this season, and that would be implode. I guess the only concern I would have, and it's not something that's a huge deal, but Milwaukee's bullpen really isn't something that I like to pick on. But on a slate like this, you may just have to suck it up.
Right. I think that might scare some people off. I see some people talking about Hader. When's the last time he pitched?
Right, exactly.
But if you are stacking Rockies, you're assuming they're getting to Peralta early, and you're assuming they're going to put up a few runs, and that hopefully Colorado gets up early enough in the game where the Brewers don't feel like they need to use Hader down 3 or 4 runs.
Exactly. So, they go to a mop-up guy. Yeah.
I mean, if you're taking one-offs, it's a little bit concerning. You've got to do something with your couple at bats against Peralta. And then after that, you could be toast. But, yeah, if you're stacking, it's not really a concern of mine.
No, me neither. Brewers bullpen is allowing the 8th most home runs per 9. So, of course, pitching at this park, things can work against you. I like the idea of getting to Colorado here, especially seeing that some of their prices have come down, man. That's a big deal to me. We just got Milwaukee's lineup here against Gray. Which side do you stand on when it comes to Gray and the Milwaukee Brewers? I will point out again that no Christian Yelich for the fourth straight day.
Yeah, no Yelich is huge. So if you're looking for Gray, there's a reason to maybe look harder into him. At 8K, I think I prefer Gray over Peralta. There are still some strikeouts in this Brewers lineup. Thame strikes out a good amount. Same thing with Shaw and Moustakas. And then you've got a bunch of righties at the bottom. Braun, Pena, Orlando, Arcia, and then pitcher spot. So I actually don't think this is too bad of a lineup for Gray. I mean, there are, of course, some speed bumps in there with the lefties, the power lefties, but I think I'm much more likely to get overweight on Gray than I am Peralta.
Yeah, so am I. And in doing so, you take a guy that basically has the same upside. Like I believe it's not about whether you believe it or not. We know that Gray has double-digit strikeout upside when things are going well for him. He has excellent stuff, man. Gray is a good pitcher. Um, he throws a very hard fastball. He's cheaper than Peralta on DraftKings. He's cheaper than Peralta on I thought on Yahoo as well. Maybe I'm wrong here.
Cheaper on Yahoo, Gray's 41, Peralta 35.
Oh, never mind. Okay, so he's only cheaper on DraftKings, um, which just makes him very appealing there. Obviously, you're not running him out in cash. It wouldn't make sense to do that. But from an ownership standpoint, Jake, Gray, I was surprised that right now he's projecting for almost the same ownership, 29% on DraftKings. So if you are targeting Gray, I don't have an issue with it. Like you said, there are some strikeouts here, but at the same time, Gray isn't exactly a contrarian pivot on DraftKings either.
No, for sure. I mean, there's a bunch of guys in this 8K range that are options. So if you want to just forego both of these guys and play Fulte at, I think he's lower than both of these guys on DK, if I remember correctly.
I think they're all around this. So Fulte.
Oh, Fulte's at 29 as well. Okay.
Yeah. Pretty much the exact same. Yeah. It is the exact same right now. And then Morton too.
So the more and more we talk about this, the more I'm confused why Peacock's just getting completely disregarded.
Totally agree. It makes no, like, I get it with Matt Strom. I hate the matchup. Totally understand it. I think we both get it with, like, okay, Tyler Mahle and Danny Duffy have higher projected ownership than Peacock. That's weird. No, I'm sorry. That was a statement. They do. That's crazy.
Yeah, I would bet that changes a little bit. I would bet it evens out when we get a couple updates here once the lineups are done coming out. But yeah,
it could, and it also just obviously has to do with the fact that they're really really cheap. But yeah, Eric Thames, 35% K rate against righties. Who else do we have? Arcia is at 25%. There are, obviously a couple guys here that don't strike out much when it comes to facing right-handed pitchers, but also a few that do. I'll say I love playing John Gray, Jake, when he's overlooked. Like, I love to roster John Gray when no one has any interest in him, but a popular John Gray does have me a little bit less interested in him, only because he is, and we've seen this so often, one of these guys that can blow up in your face or have a monster game. Sure. I like trying to get to him when nobody's on him. I'd be almost more inclined to pay a little bit more for Morton or a little bit less for Fultonevich on DraftKings, knowing that we have this projected ownership where it is.
Sure. I mean, you're going to have to take a couple stances on these chalky pitchers, one way or the other. So, yeah, I mean, just take your pick of these guys that are 29+% owned, basically. Play your favorites and play 40-50% so you can get a little bit of an edge. And then you don't have to fade everyone. You can go underweight if you have multiple lineups.
Right. What are your thoughts on bats for Milwaukee?
Just the power lefty. I mean, I don't know.
No, John Gray's good.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really love bats against Gray all that much. I mean, it'd probably be the lefties here, especially Shaw at 3,600, just underpriced on DK, it looks like. And yeah, I don't know. Would you just full stack it against Gray and just hope for an implosion if you're playing bats against him?
Honestly, I think I would. And one of the reasons that would probably be the case is looking at looking at Colorado's bullpen. They've not been particularly impressive this year. And I mean, Gray is one of those guys it's funny, Gray and Peralta are the type of guys that can just blow up in your face. Right? So it's tough. Rockies bullpen has the fourth highest xFIP this year in the league, which is funny because they have, I think, like the third lowest ERA or one of the seventh lowest ERA. It's a decent pen, but this is such a good park for hitting that I think things could get ugly for both of these pitchers. This is probably the toughest game for me to take a stand on now that we have ownership. I just thought it would be different than it is right now.
Yeah, I agree. This will be a tough one.
All right. How about, let me make sure we get, okay, so Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Charlie Morton, Danny Duffy. Duffy made his first start of the season last week, 5 days ago. Went 5 innings, 3 runs, struck out 1, walked 3. It was not a particularly impressive performance from the lefty. So you have Morton with a 3.6 total against him, Kansas City. And then on the other side, 4.5 run total for Tampa. I got to tell you, Jake, Charlie Morton is a guy who I have a good amount of respect for. And this will probably be a slate where I get a decent amount of Morton, not just because I think he's pretty safe, but it's not like Morton doesn't have upside either, right? He has a 9K game, an 8 strikeout game this year. He could give you 9-10 strikeouts against this Royals team.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so nasty against both sides. I mean, you could argue he strikes out lefties at a better rate than righties here just because of how good his curveball is. So I wouldn't be too excited about all these righties. Like, I wouldn't be like, yeah, you have to play Morton now because there's a bunch of righties. It doesn't really matter for me. The Royals, for what it's worth, strike out at just 21% against righties this season. So maybe not a perfect matchup for Morton, but it is a good price for him. It is a low total against him, and a pretty decent park with wind blowing in as well. So if he's going to be bunched in with all these guys as far as ownership outside of Barrios, I have no issue going to Morton, and I'll probably get more than the field.
Yeah, agreed. And you're right. He does strike lefties out at a higher clip. Also does an excellent job of limiting runs and base runners to righties, though, too, which is nice.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like he's bad against righties by any stretch. I wanted to pull up this Royals team and look at the strikeout rates for these guys. We'll go back to, say, last year. It's kind of interesting because, like you said, their collective K rate really isn't that high, but they have a few guys that do strike out a lot against righties. What's our lineup today? Merrifield,
Mondesi, Gordon, Dozier, Soler, Kelvin Gutierrez, Owings, Maldonado, Hamilton. So, wow, that bottom of the lineup is pretty bad, actually.
Yeah, so let's take it back a year. Look at these K rates versus righties. You've got Soler at 29%. You have Mondesi at 28. Owings, you said Owings is in there, right?
Do you have Owings? Is in there, batting 7.
Yeah. Owings at 27. Dozier at 26%. So, yeah. And then, you know, guys like Maldonado and Hamilton are around 22, 23. Yeah, it's tough to say. There are a decent amount of strikeouts here.
Yeah. At the top and the bottom. So why do they only have a 21% K rate? Who's missing in this lineup?
It's funny. I've wondered the same thing this year when I see that they're coming in as 21%. I've looked through it. Are you doing the active? Well, yeah, no, you're doing this season, of course. So season. Yeah, I maybe they're just, because I went back to last season. Maybe they're just striking out. Let's see. They're probably striking out less this season. Yeah, it looks like they are. So it looks like guys like Hunter Dozier striking out less. Soler and Owings are striking out a lot. Hamilton's striking out at 25%. Mondesi's at 25%. O'Hear's at 22%. But yeah, Dozier, Maldonado, and Gordon are and Merrifield aren't striking out a lot at all. So it's kind of like split down the middle.
Yeah. And then looking at Morton, it doesn't look like he struggles with holding runners all that much either, which you like against Merrifield and Mondesi especially. And then Hamilton, if he can somehow get on base. So that's actually not a huge concern. So the more and more I look at it, the more it's going to be hard for me to avoid Morton, especially if Noah Syndergaard's going to be higher owned than him.
For sure. Oh, and by the way, Kelvin Gutierrez, Zips has him at a 25% K rate. Steamer's at 23. So I would assume that comes up a bit. The guy was striking out at 25% at double A. I think we probably see that climb as well. Yeah, Morton is a guy who I really don't have any issues going to today. We don't have him on FanDuel though, and on Yahoo he's the most expensive pitcher. So that's a little bit more difficult. I prefer him on DraftKings, where he's cheaper than Syndergaard, 900 cheaper than Berrios. That's where he'd be my preferred play, and only 400 more than Morton. What do you think of Duffy or the hitters in this game?
Duffy's a guy that I'm going to get to just out of necessity because I'm not really going to Molly. So I haven't done a lot of crunches just yet, but yeah, I think you're going to have to make a choice or play both of Molly and Duffy if we like all these 8 and 9K pitchers just to get some expensive bats in your lineup. So I'm going to get to Duffy. Looking at his ownership, he is going to be pretty low owned. And I think is he lower than Tyler Molly?
You said Duffy?
Yeah. Oh, they're the same.
They're exactly the same.
Yeah, so if that's close, I do prefer Duffy. I just think he's a better pitcher right now, and he gets to pitch in the same weather as Morton. 58 degrees, wind blowing in. So while I don't love attacking Tampa that much, I'm hoping there's some lefties in this lineup for Duffy, and it's just a good price, and I think an okay situation for Duffy.
Agreed. Looking over his first start, I think everything looked okay. Nothing to be super worried about. And the Angels are one of those teams that, while they're not very good, they just don't have many strikeouts in that lineup. So,
yep.
Tampa Bay's offense is kind of fascinating because, but I don't think we have. Is this the only lineup we're waiting on? This in Houston?
Houston, yeah. Colorado, we don't have confirmation on just yet.
Colorado actually just came in.
Okay.
Yeah, Blackmon, Story, David Dahl, no Murphy. Blackmon, Story, Dahl, Arenado, McMahon, Reynolds, Tapia, Tony Walters, and Gray. I'll be honest, it changes my opinion a little bit on someone like Peralta with Murphy out of the lineup.
Yeah, that all of a sudden looks a lot worse of a lineup without Murphy jammed in there in the 3-hole or whatever.
It does, doesn't it? I think.
But, I mean, Dahl's fine. They still have Arenado. Just the bottom of that lineup, for stackability reasons, it looks a little bit worse to get to. I don't know if that increases the ownership for Peralta a little bit. If so, I'm probably still off Peralta.
Yeah, and you have no Desmond either.
Yeah.
I was looking at these strikeout rates. There are some decent K rates here for the Rockies, man. I mean, nothing insane, but McMahon's at 30%. This is against righties. McMahon's at 30. Reynolds is at 28. Tapia 27. No Desmond. Story at 26. David Dahl at 24. Man, I know Walters doesn't strike out, but he's also so terrible. Like this becomes a lot more appealing for me, taking a 9% strikeout guy out of the lineup and replacing him with, who are they replacing him with?
Man.
What, I don't even remember. Is Murphy starting at first base this year?
I honestly don't even know. But we've got an updated lineup now on our lineup page, so
I don't know.
I can't see what the old one was.
Yeah, so I will say it changes my opinion a little bit.
Josh in Premium Slack, Josh Engelman. I'm going to have so much Rockies. So he's not worried about Murphy.
Yeah, fair enough. Murphy's been starting at first. It's not about, for me, it's not about being worried about Murphy, but it is about saying he makes a big difference in this lineup.
For sure.
If you're an opposing pitcher and you have to face a guy that has a 27% K rate or a 9% K rate when there's runners on base.
Yeah.
All right. What do you say we just quickly, by the way, did you want to, I don't know how you like to do it when you're on the show. Did you want to run some crunches? I know you have your screen sharing.
Oh, we can do that. I can I can load some up for the early slate if we want to see while we're talking about these later games. Are you gonna play this slate? I don't think.
The early one?
No, the later one. I mean, we can talk about the games. I did look over some of the pitching.
Yeah, we could take a quick look at them. I mean, I'm mostly focused on the early one.
Yep. Okay.
But I think we could just kind of breeze through them real quickly.
Sure.
Yahoo's main slate does have them, so
Yeah, let's do it then.
All right. St. Louis and Washington, Strasburg, Dakota Hudson. Strasburg is the second highest priced pitcher. No, sorry. Yeah, tied with Price as the second highest priced pitcher on Yahoo. And then I just want to make sure here, going to FanDuel, looking to see what their slates look like as far as this one goes. So FanDuel has the slate that you and I just discussed. It's 4 games. Then they have an afternoon only, right? Which is, I'm assuming, 2 games. Yeah, that's the Tampa and St. Louis one. So you have Strasburg, Morton, Duffy, Dakota Hudson. Those are your 4 pitchers. Do you like Strasburg against St. Louis team that we know is going to run out a lot of righties, but also, a lot of good righties?
Yeah, I mean, you would think St. Louis would have some better strikeout numbers to attack, but looking at what they've done so far this season, they are just a 22% K rate. That ranks 20th in the MLB against righties. They hit for power against righties, but on the other side, I mean, I'm really impressed with what Strasburg's done this season. I mean, just missing a ton of bats, and obviously you can strike out righties or lefties. I think you'd prefer to have a bunch of righties in there. So it's strength versus strength here. And on the Yahoo slate, this game is included, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Yahoo includes all of them.
So I would think Strasburg is going to be pretty much ignored with some of these prices. He is, let's see what we have him for ownership. Oh, we don't have, wait, do we not have Yahoo ownership up?
So that's what that's what I was saying earlier with the way the slates are all wonky. I don't think we do. Let me see if it's.
Oh, okay. So we've got the Yahoo ownership up for like Syndergaard and Peralta and some of these guys. It looks like Strasburg's just left out. It's probably tough to, get that all up early. But
yeah, because of the way the slate is set
they're
up.
so different from site to site.
Maybe okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to filter through the. Yeah, no, he's not up there right now.
There. I would expect him to be quite a bit lower than like Syndergaard and
Peralta. I think you're right on this one because you have, Morton's the most expensive. That's tough, but you also have David Price against the White Sox. Like people might want to go there as well, even though that price is a bit rich. I think you're spot on with this one, and then Peralta's very cheap, like you said. So a lot of cheap pitchers here. Yeah, if you're getting low ownership on Strasburg on a slate like this, that is pretty appealing. Just knowing that he has upside for 10 strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about missing bats. Strasburg is 9th in the MLB in whiffs per swing amongst starters. So that's highest on the slate, on the all-day slate. And he is, like I said, he is getting a bunch of righties. It's not the greatest strikeout matchup, but he's kind of overcome a lot of that this season. So there's no red flags for Strasburg. I don't want to target bats against him on Yahoo. He's just, you either play him or you kind of avoid the Cardinals bats. I'm probably avoiding the Cardinals bats altogether here.
Yeah. Jay Goods just let me know the Houston lineup is out. No Carlos Correa.
Nice.
No Tyler White. So you have Aledmys Diaz, Tony Kemp.
Yeah.
Honestly, it may be watered down to an extent from a power standpoint, but there's still like no strikeouts here.
That's true.
None.
So not a big upgrade, even though you get Correa out of there. Just a minuscule upgrade at best for Barrios, but it will keep his ownership down.
Certainly will. By the way, 4.2 run implied total for the Cardinals. It is actually like right in the middle of the road. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th lowest. So it's not like Strasburg's getting a ton of love from Vegas here, which probably means he'll be even even less popular. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that probably has a lot to do with the weather. It looks like it's going to be 80 degrees in DC. So
Yeah.
just some bad weather games elsewhere, like here in Minnesota, um, Kansas City. It's not great weather there either. So that's why you're seeing some of the low totals. But 4.2 isn't terrible for a game that's going to be pretty hot.
No, it's not. It's just with Strasburg, I think people generally assume that it's going to be sub 4. Uh, what about the other side here? Any thoughts on Dakota Hudson?
I don't like Hudson. I wouldn't be playing him on the slate. I don't think the Nats are a great matchup. If Soto's in there, obviously it's even worse. He's got a questionable tag right now, it looks like, but no Hudson for me. It would be a lot of Soto and a lot of Matt Adams as well.
All right. So I don't know if there's any bats here outside of Washington, like you just mentioned. Not really looking to pick on Strasburg. Let's go on. We got 2 games to go on this slate. Like I said, FanDuel's running super chopped up slates today. 4-game early slate, 2-game afternoon slate, and then I'm assuming they've got their main slate, quote unquote main slate, is 2 games as well, and that features David Price, Tyler Skaggs, Aaron Sanchez, Lucas Giolito, and again Yahoo also has all of the games included in their main slate. So we'll do this quickly. What are your thoughts here on David Price and Giolito? It's in Chicago between the White Sox and Boston. Run totals for this one 5.4 for Boston, highest on the slate, and it's actually not even close. And then 3.7 for the White Sox, third lowest on this 8-game full slate.
The spot for Giolito is just, I think, really, really rough. The Red Sox just kind of have everything in their lineup, and Giolito's a guy that is already a boomer bust guy. It's just not a good matchup at all. It is good weather if this game does in fact go. It looks like there are some weather concerns with some light rain throughout the game. I don't think I would get to Giolito, and then it's hard to argue with not playing Price here. White Sox striking out at over 25% versus that's versus righties. Versus lefties, they are,
I think it's the highest in the league going back to last season.
yeah, this season they are middle of the pack, but yeah, I remember last year you targeted them, well, with either side, but especially lefties. Even with all these right-handed bats in the lineup, they were still just fanning all the time.
Going back to, sorry, not to cut you off, going back to the start of last season, the White Sox have the second highest K rate versus lefties, behind only the Orioles.
Yeah, so very little power against left-handed pitching this season. 137 ISO, obviously not a huge sample just yet, but Price has just been really solid in my eyes. And again, if this game goes and it's 45 degrees and he's a big road favorite, I've got no problem playing him. I don't know that I'd get to a ton of him on the all-day slate. At 10-1 on DK, or if you're playing the main, he's probably going to be mega chalk on the 2-gamer. So there's always merit in going against a guy like that, but I can't really pick out a White Sox bat that I'm crazy about playing here. I mean, does $5,500 Tim Anderson sound good to you?
Oh God, dude, those prices are so outrageous, and they're not changing at all. What did you say? He's still 5,500?
Yeah, 5,500.
It's insane. I mean, I know he's been good, but that's really hard to fathom. How much is Bogarts? I didn't pull it up on DraftKings.
47.
I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
There's no reason he should be $800 less than Tim Anderson.
I agree.
That's wild. I will say this much though. People rip on Giolito a lot, and look, I don't think this is a spot where you're looking to play him, but Giolito actually has some good swing and miss stuff. He has a 12.5% swinging strike rate this year. If you actually look at the pitches that he throws, he's scrapped the 2-seamer, which is great for fantasy purposes. Throwing the 4-seamer 55% of the time this year. He throws a slider, a changeup, a curve, and he uses some of them sparingly, but his whiff rate on the slider, on the changeup, two pitches that have really gotten good results for him. And when you have a slider and you have a working changeup, it means that you can throw one of them against same-handed hitters and then the other against opposite-handed hitters. Like Giolito will be a guy that if he continues to just kind of be disrespected and ignored in better matchups, I will be considering him this year. It's just tough to do it against the Boston Red Sox, not because of their power, but because you very rarely get high strikeout games from these guys.
Yeah, that's the issue. So if it was like a more of a Brewers type team where you have a bunch of power but also a lot of strikeouts, I would be more likely to play Giolito, especially on a 2-game slate like this, or depending on which site you're talking about. But yeah, there's just where's the upside here for Giolito even at 6,400? Like none of these guys strike out very much on the Red Sox, especially at the top of the order.
Yeah. Man, it's funny though. His swing and miss stuff has actually been really good this year.
He's been frustrating, I think, to everyone, like all of us here, me, you, Adam, Josh. Like there's been times where we've been like, all right, he's made the changes and he's gonna be a good pitcher now, and then he gets crushed for 6 earned runs in an inning and a third. So
yeah, it's totally it's totally how I feel about Kyle Gibson. Like all the stuff is there, and every time I play him or recommend him, he's garbage.
Yep, he's another one of my guys. Like you look at the swing and strike, the swing and miss stuff, swinging strikes, all that stuff, and he looks like he should be a really good pitcher, and you always get him at 7-8K, but he seems to never really put it together.
All right. Well, Boston bats then, I guess it is. We have to go there, right?
It'd be hard not to. I just don't know on the DK slate how you would get to a lot of Boston bats with Price. Because Giolito is really the only like cheap pitcher on that slate. So it would be tough from a lineup construction standpoint. You'd have to pick and choose a couple and then take bats from the other game. But yeah, in theory, I would like to stack up Boston here.
What about on Yahoo though? Because we have 8 games, and like I said, Giolito's not terrible. But then at the same time, he is the type of guy that when things go south, he can't put it back together. Is this a spot where because we have 8 games, you have more interest or less interest in Boston and say I'll just stay away from it altogether? Or are you looking at this? This is by the way, we could have some weather in this game, but I'm looking at it now. Did you see the temperature here?
45.
45 at first
Crazy.
pitch.
Yeah.
That's cold, man. That's not good hitting weather at all.
No, not at all. So, Boston, they look like they're priced okay on Yahoo. Betts 24, JD 22, Bogarts $20. Anderson's still more expensive than Bogarts on Yahoo. So everyone's on that train, I guess. Benintendi only 19 leading off. So I could see myself getting to a Boston stack, but looking at some of these pitchers, they're all priced at 44, 45, 47 for Fulte, 48 for Strasburg. So I'd like to start my teams on Yahoo with both of those, or with a couple of those guys. So I just don't know if I would get to a lot of Boston stacks. It'd be one-offs, like I mentioned, Benintendi and Betts and JD.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's tackle this last game here, and then we can get to those crunches, and we'll head out for the day. This slate starts at 12:10 Eastern. It's a nice early start. Angels, Toronto. We got ourselves Tyler Skaggs and Aaron Sanchez. I think Skaggs has good strikeout stuff. There's no question that he can get some punch outs. Is he going to be the second most popular pitcher on this slate?
I would think so. On the late slate, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it is, David Price on FanDuel 52%, Skaggs at 30. That's fascinating, man. You have 2 games and the ownership is actually more spread out than I would have thought. Not really. Price 52, Skaggs 35, Giolito 7, Aaron Sanchez 6. Let's say you are playing a 2-gamer, Jake. Is there anything different you do on FanDuel? I think it's hard to say yes, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Anything different? Uh,
Meaning at pitcher, knowing that Price and Skaggs are the two guys that are going to take up 90% of the total ownership.
no, I mean you're still looking at raw points there, and just fill in the batters afterwards is what I would do with Skaggs and Price. Like Giolito, again, I just don't see the upside with him. It'd be far fetched to think that he would be the highest raw point scoring pitcher on FanDuel, where you only get one slot. And then same thing for Sanchez. I mean, I'd maybe be more likely to use Sanchez than Giolito, but again, where are you getting the strikeouts on the Angels? I know it's not a great lineup, but a 5.1 run total is pretty telling. And yeah, I'd probably just stick with Price and Skaggs.
And also, it's like if you're going to play Giolito, what are you going to pay up for? You're going cheap so you can pay up for Boston bats against Giolito.
Yeah,
It doesn't really.
That's the problem.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense there. All right. Well, any bats from this game that you like? Because neither pitcher is really a gas can here at all.
No, they're not. Neither pitcher is one that I love attacking, but you look at Skaggs' numbers versus righties going back to the start of 2018. He does strike them out at a respectable clip, 23%, 403 xFIP, but a 144 whip, and then 40+% hard contact. And then you look at these prices for the Blue Jays bats on Yahoo. Vlad Guerrero Jr. $12, Grichuk 15, Smoke 16, Teoscar at 12. So the 2 through 5 was what I would be looking at on the all-day slate on Yahoo. Even though Skaggs is a good pitcher, like it's hard to ignore those prices when you've got a bunch of pitching you want to pay up for.
Right. Aaron Sanchez, man, it's funny because his last year against lefties, he was just unbelievably bad. I think he finished the season with a negative K minus BB rate. This year, he has 21% strikeouts, 16% walks against lefties. Last year, I have a point here. Bear with me. Last year was negative 1.2% K minus BB rate against lefties. So it's still bad, but it's not as bad. And when it comes to holding runners, he's like league average. But is there even really, what speed are we finding on the base paths here? I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot to look at. This is if you're playing this 2-game late slate, you're kind of just crossing your fingers and praying to the baseball gods that things go your way.
Yeah. So I'm not above MMEing 2-game slates. I don't know if I'm going to do that here. Yeah. I don't know. I'm playing NHL today, so I don't know if I'll get to a 2-game MLB slate and play 2 different sports, 2-game slates. But
yeah, it's certainly not about, I'm not saying it's about being above it, just more or less everybody playing the exact same pitcher and
yeah. How would you get to
targeting.
Boston bats? Because like you mentioned, were you going to pay down? You're going to play a reliever and then
right.
Like
where does it get
where do you get to a Boston stack on DK, I guess?
Right. Yeah, it's really tough to say. Yeah, and if you're playing on DraftKings, obviously Yahoo is running the full 8-gamer. If you're doing it on DraftKings, you have to play 2 pitchers now.
Yeah.
So that makes it even more impossible.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
for
sure.
Know, man.
I don't know. I just think roster construction would be really tough. And you would just try to kind of get away from one of the chalk pitchers, whether it's Price or Skaggs, and leverage would just be massive on the 2-gamers. So if you don't like Skaggs or Price, if you think they're in a pretty tough spot, or you like the value on one of the bats on the other side, then by all means stack it up, because if you're right, you're just gaining so much more leverage with the concentrated ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably the right approach to take on a slate like this that's so small. All right, Jake, that's 8 games. Do you want to take a look here at what we've got going on for on Cruncher?
Yeah, so I just used the Cruncher projections. I don't know if we have the projections up on Osmo.com just yet. So the Cruncher projections will do just fine. It seems like they're very high on Fulte and Syndergaard. So we can kind of see what happens when you put Fulte in your lineups. And this is DK, by the way. So you get Fulte, Duffy. The first lineup here is Fulte, Duffy with a 5-man Braves, Blackmon, Arenado, and a Locaine one-off.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this is
Locaine.
yeah. I looking at some of these lineups, I really like how the Duffy lineups come out. The Rays also are striking out the most against lefties this season, almost a 30% K rate. So something I forgot to mention on Duffy, but yeah,
Is it that high this year? Wow.
yeah, they're really, really waving and missing. 30.1% versus lefties. They have a 99 WRC plus because they do still have some power. But yeah, um, really, really looking heavily at Duffy. Now, when I refresh this lineup, I'm sure we're going to have some errors here. But, oh, by the way, what do you think of the new FC Pro? Do you use Fantasy Cruncher a lot?
Yeah, I haven't as much lately, for a couple of reasons I won't get into, but yeah, dude, very nice.
Yeah. So we'll have the ownership projections loaded and updated right in this column for anybody that doesn't know about FC Pro. Josh is supposed to do a video today. I believe it's going to be today. So be on the lookout for that. He'll walk you through how to use the new FC Pro, which becomes available for purchase tomorrow. So I'm super excited about that. I'm sure everyone here is very, very excited to
Yeah, I would
upgrade.
check out all of Josh's videos on Fantasy Cruncher as well,
Yeah, for
for
sure.
sure.
Uh,
Uh, Go ahead.
a lot of Rockies. It's looking like. So I just like the leverage you're getting. I mean, whether you're stacking Rockies or Brewers, either side of that game or both, you can take out two pitchers with one game. Syndergaard, Duffy, with a five-man Rockies stack. Dahl, Blackmon, Story, McMahon, and Walters, unfortunately. But then you get Freeman, one-off, Moustakis, and Gamble. 5-2-1.
So a lot of Milwaukee.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of Milwaukee uh, Braves. We're getting a ton of Freeman one-offs, which I really like. Lefty, lefty. I think that'll scare some people off, but I don't think either of us are worried about playing Freeman versus a lefty.
No, not at all. I One of the things to me that stands out though is I'm curious. I want to take let's take a look at just hitter ownership for a second.
Sure.
Um, because yeah, okay, so they are going to be popular. Like I was seeing where Atlanta would be here, and it looks like, well, maybe it's just Acuna.
So Acuna Swanson, we're getting a lot of. I think Swanson wasn't
Yeah,
expected to
Bronson
be.
too. Batting
Yeah.
second, which makes sense. Freeman's up there a decent amount too. Yeah, you know what? No, they're up there. Yeah, Atlanta's ownership is going to be it's going to be up there. I think rightfully so.
Yeah.
By the way, also, and this is really just a price thing. We've seen it. It looks like San Diego again too, just because they're so discounted on DraftKings.
So we got very little San Diego in this. Just some two-man San Diego
Right.
stacks.
I'm just talking about our projected
hmm
ownership right now, where we have them at. I'm perfectly fine not going to a lot of San Diego against Fultonevich.
Yeah, I don't love that. I mean, from a leverage standpoint, it makes some sense, but a bunch of righties versus Fulte, I'm just not that interested in. I know
No.
Fremno Reyes is cheap across the board. He's $13 on Yahoo. Kinsler's $7 on Yahoo leading off. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, I just don't love attacking Fulte with a bunch of right-handed bats.
It sure is strange that these Braves cut prices have come down this much. I know DraftKings, uses the dynamic pricing where matchup is factored into it, but man, you know, Ronald Acuna is $4,400. He's the same price as or he's cheaper than Alex Gordon.
Yeah, that's crazy. Just from a talent perspective.
Yeah, that is really something else. I mean, you could use Fultonevich and Syndergaard or Fultonevich and Morton and still get the Brave stack in there easily. Um, Look, for a small slate, I like it. There are a couple teams. What do you? How much? Because I don't see you screaming out. How much Mets did it come up with, if any at all?
Yeah, so I'm
Because I
actually
like the top of that Mets lineup a lot,
yeah, I'm
man.
on the Mets right now. So I just searched by team stacks, and it's a lot of Mets with Fulte and Fulte and Syndergaard once again. But some of these Mets stacks, you can get Mets five man with Smith, Cano, Conforto, Frazier, Ramos. Swanson one off, and then Dahl Blackmon. So just
I like that.
yeah, that looks like a really good one. If you like targeting against Peacock, you can get basically the same lineup: McNeil, Conforto, Cano, Smith, Ramos, Shaw one off with Polanco, Rosario. So two guys I really love against Peacock. If you're going there, let's see. Yeah, these Met stacks look really, really nice against Tyler Mahle. And then you can get in some good one-offs with Syndergaard and Fulte, so you understand why those guys are going to be chalky.
For sure. The only thing I wish you could do, the only thing I wish is that we had a little more MPE. It's crazy to think that because a lot of these guys have a position eligibility everywhere, but like Atlanta and Mets, when you're looking at those stacks, there's a couple like Smith batting second, Freeman obviously Freddie Freeman batting towards the top of the order, one of the best players on this team. They're both first base eligible. Cano and Albies are both only second base eligible. So you can definitely stack them individually really nicely. But, two of my favorite teams in Atlanta and the New York Mets, you're going to have to get creative there, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was just searching for the lineup combos, the 5-2 combos, and I don't see Atlanta and the Mets anywhere around here. So
yeah, they don't. I
just don't fit.
haven't crunched it, but just looking at it doesn't look like they fit nicely together, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, that is.
But you can make it work.
Right. Maybe just not the best pieces of each stack. Gonna have to sacrifice on one side or the other.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. Even in the outfield, right? Like you have Conforto, Acuna, Camargo, Markakis, who is an easy fade, I think, just the lefty, and then Brandon Nimmo. Yeah, it's interesting, but let's do this before we head out. Who are your favorite stacks? We'll do for the 5-gamer.
For the 5-gamer, let's see. My favorite would probably be the Mets. Actually, I think the Mets or the Braves. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Mets, Braves, and I feel like something's going to happen in that Milwaukee Colorado game, but it's really tough to say.
There's just so much leverage between two volatile pitchers.
Yeah, exactly. There's a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
All right, Jake, you got anything else?
No, that was good. Ran through all 8, and
yes, sir.
Now it's time to build some lineups for this early slate. We got about an hour and 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, we're good, man. I'm putting something together right now. By the way, no deeper dive or live before lock today. Only 2 games, so you can obviously refer to the website for all of our content, projections, player projections, ownership projections. Adam Scher is writing the deep dive article today. We've got a whole lot going on there, and you can check it out to get 50% off your first month by using the promo code MLB Strategy, all one word, MLB Strategy. Use that if you click sign up on the homepage, select your plan. We got Fantasy Cruncher. Jake was just talking about it. We have that add-on. We have the lineup builder, all of Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, his content, his rankings, projections, everything you need to be successful in DFS. And you can get 50% off your first month simply by using the promo code MLB Strategy, all one word. Come check it out and say what's up in the premium Slack chat when you do. All of us are hanging out in there throughout the day. I think that'll do it for us, Jake.
All right. Good luck, guys.
Good luck. And remember, check out Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They've got the full 8-gamer going on today for their main slate. Pretty interesting, doing it a little bit differently, but it certainly opens things up. All right, we'll be back with you. Strategy show tomorrow. It will be Josh and it will be Adam. And then Jake and I will be with you next Thursday on the Strategy show every morning. Good luck tonight.